Welcome everybody. I'm Todd Graff, Winemaker General Manager at Frank Family, and we're down here with Mike Sangiacomo. So Mike, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for coming down to join us.
So Mike, why don't you give us a little history of how it all started for your family?
Thanks. My grandparents immigrated from Italy, not directly to Sonoma, but through San Francisco and some other jobs that my grandfather had. But he had found this property in 1927, and he was coming up from San Francisco to visit a friend, and there was the natural warm baths up in Boy Springs. The Europeans really loved the natural spring baths, and the ranch was for sale as next door to his friend, who's right across from us here. And he was able to garner enough money and borrow enough money to purchase the ranch. And at that point, it was mostly fruit orchards. There was prunes, pears, apples, and cherries. And he sold his interest in his little business in San Francisco of garbage collecting and moved up to Sonoma to be a farmer. I think that's really where his heart was. When he was back in Italy, his family didn't have a lot of land or any land. He was a shepherd, but he was around agriculture. And so he grew up around it and enjoyed it and loved it. So I think this is really when he found this piece of property, it kind of struck a chord in his heart. But it was, at that point, he got married, settled down here, and then they had 4 children, my aunt, Lorraine, my father, Angelo, and then my uncles, Buck and Bob. And then the ranch just at that point continued to grow a little bit as they...
All the kids were the cheap labor.
That's absolutely, absolutely. No, they all grew up. They all grew up working on the ranch. In fact, it's one of the my dad and uncle tell the story. It's kids now look forward to summer break. They didn't really. They look forward to going back to school because they didn't have to get up and work every day. And then over the years, the family's expanded, purchasing neighboring ranches. But the conversion to grapes was in 1969. We planted the first wine grapes at that point. So as I mentioned, we were growing fruit orchards at that time, but that was our first entourage into wine grape.
Great, well let's jump into some of the wines we make off these vineyards. Today we have our Carneros blend. So fruit from Foundation Fruit Vineyards are really Rich and Leslie Frank's Lewis Vineyard on the Napa side of Carneros. Then we follow the path along, and contiguous to that property is Andy Beckstoffer's Carneros Lake and Las Amigas Vineyard. We keep going that way, and as we head west, we end up in the Sangiacomo properties. And one of the funnest things is we buy several different clones, different lots, different locations. So when you think of a vineyard in a family like the Sangiacomos, it's not just one plot at one spot. They're farming all over the Carneros region. So the Carneros 2020, a blend of many vineyards. And then we come into the 2020 Sangiacomo Vineyard. This is 100% from one block. It's the Keyser Ranch. So we've been buying, that's one of the longest blocks I've been buying, and it always seems to be one of our favorite every year. So this is it, and this is same oak profile too. It's just, instead of a blend of many vineyards from the whole Carneros region, it's one tiny block of Sonoma Carneros. And then we have the Carneros Pinot Noir, which is basically the sibling of the Carneros Chardonnay. Same idea, it's a blend of many. We have a little planted in our vineyard at Lewis. And again, we say the same thing. We kind of come through from east to west, through the Beckstoffer Vineyards, and then over the hill to Sonoma Carneros, to the Sangiacomo Vineyards. Mike, what was the kind of the history and the story of all the different blocks and how you started acquiring and working with some owners and putting all that together, and Chardonnay and Pinot, because you guys were kind of at the forefront of this Chardonnay Pinot stuff.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, my grandfather just slowly started expanding. As he had more children, he had to get another ranch because he needed a little bit more mouths to feed. But as we were expanding that way, getting diversification and moving out from our home ranch, how we came to the varieties of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir is when the original planting in 1969, there was Chard and Pinot, and there was even Cabernet in there. Yeah. And quickly learned that those weren't getting ripe, and that Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, the 2 varieties, did the best. So from that period of time, then we just started propagating and expanding with Chard and Pinot. We did dabble in some Merlot and some other things, but Chard and Pinot really are the two varieties that do the best here.
For our wines, we're looking for balance, and this lends to this region. It retains the acidity down here, which I really look at. I pick on acid as much as I do on flavor and sugar. I want to retain that acid or wait till it comes down a little sometimes, depending on the blocks. But again, our Chard barrel fermented, French oak, third new every vintage approximately. And again, we're looking, our house style is all about balance. It's rich and it's full, but it's still balanced. What makes Carneros such a great area, and why are you guys so excited about the Carneros region?
You know, I think it's a combination of soils and climate. You know, you don't have a huge vigorous soil profile of most Carneros. You know, you have moderate to lower vigor sites here, which I think helps moderate vigor, focusing a little bit more effort of the vine into the fruit. And I think then you're looking at the climate. You know, we're warm days and then cold nights. And I think that diurnal change, where we really get cold at night, really kind of preserves the acid. And I look at the structure of these wines in here, and you know that you have great balance, but there's good acid structure in all these wines. And I think that, you know, Carneros contributes a lot of that to a balance in Chardonnay in particular, and Pinot as well.
Carneros is really known also for some wind. How do you guys farm for the wind and take that into consideration?
I think, you know, your road direction, you know, you take that into account, and then you're also, you know, how you're designing your canopy. You know, your trellis system really has to be accounting for the wind and stuff, because there are some afternoons that get pretty windy, as you commented on. It can be a little chilly with that wind blowing as well. So, but you have to account for that. But I think it is something that can add to the complexity of the wines, because you're getting a little bit less growth, and you know, like I said, you're cooling off in the afternoons quickly with those afternoon breezes.
Briefly talk about some of the farming changes you've seen in your career, let alone your grandfather and your fathers and your uncles, just your career. What's kind of new and exciting now?
Well, I think a lot of things have changed over time. You know, all evolution of the practices of farming are to make the wines better. And in addition to making the wines better, is this conscious of, you know, sustainability, trying to do more with less. You know, make better wines and having less impact, you know, in your surrounding environment. You know, we just have seen, right now we're in a little bit of a parched period of time, so we'll talk about drought. So just talking about our water management, you know, really with the newer techniques, the technology that we have is really trying to give the vine just the right amount of water that it needs and not have any excess water, because excess water is wasting water, obviously, and it also doesn't contribute to better wine quality. So, you know, that's just one subject we talk about. That's, you know, it's a hot topic right now because of you know, our drought that we're in right now. But and then there's several other things into that. You know, you're looking at better, more efficient ways of using your resources. But again, the underlying thing is it's got to make better wine.
Well, I just want to again thank Mike and his family, first for the business and that relationship, but then taking time out of his busy schedule to freeze a little bit out here on a cold February morning. Cheers. Thank you.